Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Before I start today, we have a special program today, but before we start, I want to remind you, if you miss seeing this program live, you can always find this program on RonPaulLibertyReport.com because these programs will be there and you can get to them if you miss a program live. Today is going to be different because I'm going to take live tweets from the audience, and we haven't really done this with the Liberty Reports, but I want to get the viewers more engaged. I see the first question that comes in is Garrett Waits, who writes to me and says, Ron Paul, is conservation something the government should be involved in? For instance, the national park system. I think it's a good question because, if you're a true libertarian, you have no government ownership of land, but that might be an idealistic world that we will never reach. And he's asked specifically about national park system. I think that moving in that direction, if we had even a good republic, we wouldn't have a national park system. What we would have is we'd have individual states, and they would have parks if they wanted them. But in a true libertarian state, parks could be very well managed by private organizations. And yet today, most people believe that the government has to take care of that. And we don't think that the government should be the sole responsibility for taking care of parks. But in a free society, there would be parks, and I think it would be best if they were more local control. But I think that, and nevertheless, we should recognize the fact that we should move in a certain direction. So the least amount of government involvement, the better. I don't think we're going to see the day when there's going to be so minimal amount of government. But I don't think that should dispel the idea and the effort to talk about, the perfect free society, even though we recognize we don't reach that. The far left and the authoritarians and the globalists, they have all kinds of goals which they're not going to achieve, but they never give up on them. I've always argued that you should have a goal and you should have a precise definition for the role of government in a perfectly free society, even recognizing that we're not going to see that achieved. Because if you don't have a goal based on a perfect idea, I think what you do is you don't sit in the middle, you have the other side wins out. Because if you start from the middle and say, okay, yeah, we can't have what we want, so we will argue the case that we just want to slow down the globalists, I don't think that works at all. So I would say that do our very best to make things local, including parks. You have local parks at the local level. Local communities have them, and there's nothing wrong with having the idea and concept discussed about even having private parks. Now, I have another one coming in from Libertarian, and he writes to me and says, Ron Paul, do you believe in global warming? And of course, the very fast answer, which is very complete, sure, I believe in global warming. Global warming has been going off and on for centuries, if not for thousands of years. There's evidence of ice ages and warm ages and all that. And we do know that there's climate change, and the globe gets warmer and then it gets colder. But I think what is implied is, do I believe in the fear-mongering of the radical environmentalists that are saying the end is coming, and Al Gore was right, and the whole world is going to be destroyed because of the modern age. And I don't think that's true. I think it's a lot of hype, a lot of fear-mongering. I think that there's a lot of false information out. For instance, if you look at the last 100 years, you find that some people will come up with statistics showing, oh yeah, the globe is getting warmer and warmer, and there's so many problems. But between 1910 and 1940, the average temperature went up 0.5 degrees centigrade between 1910 and 1940, in 30 years. From 1940 to 1970, it was essentially flat. from 1970 to the year 2000, it went up another 0.57 centigrade. And so you could say, well, the last 100 years it's gone up gradually. What's happened in the last 15 years in this century? Actually, it's very static. It's flat. But there's a lot of deceitful information out there. I think there's a lot of hoax in it. I think that people are fudging the figures, and we do know that some of the scientists are on the defensive now because they have fudged the figures and they have not been upfront with us. So I think it's a political tool that a lot of people use to get control of property. And but I don't think we can say the globe has not warmed up. But it's interesting to see that, you know, in the middle part of the century when we were fighting World War II and dropping all these bombs and nuclear and atomic weapons, when there was a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, the temperature was flat. So I don't think there's any relationship to CO2. You can go back thousands of years and find ice with huge amounts of CO2, and yet they lived in an ice age. Here's another question, another tweet from Very Sapiens. And this says, Ron Paul, do you favor the rights of states, communities, and individuals to secede? And we could get into discussion on whether states actually have rights, but I think the gist of this question is, do they have the authority and should they be able to? Yes, the answer is yes. I think the founders of this country believe that the states should be able to secede. They went together voluntarily. It's a voluntary contract, and they should leave. But of course, that principle was destroyed, you know, with the Civil War. But communities, this whole idea is that communities get bigger and bigger and they're looking for more tax revenues. It's really a harm to the people. So big government, whether it's international governments or whether it's our federal government or whether it's the state or very, very large cities, taking over all the neighboring communities. But the real issue is, what about individuals to secede? Well, it'd be real nice, but how will that ever happen? Probably not. But you should be able to. The principle of liberty is that you should be able to lead your own life. And if seceding means that you can take care of yourself and live in a community and promise you won't hurt anybody, yes, we should absolutely push for that. And just think, if every individual who seceded took care of themselves, it would be a wonderful world. You wouldn't have to take care of them. There'd be no welfare state. There would be no militarism around the world. So under those circumstances, that would be very good. Unfortunately, though, the authoritarians are in charge, and they're both conservatives and liberals, and they like to take control of the situation and not allow you to leave. But this is the most important thing right now. It's getting harder to leave even this country with your money if you don't think things are going well here, because they don't want you to expatriate or secede or even leave. And certainly under the most authoritarian system like in Russia, that was the case, and they build walls around individuals like that so they can't leave. I have another question here for Jesus Sanchez, and this is an interesting question. This is, Ron Paul, why we should or should not raise the minimum wage? Russia has one of the lowest, Australia one of the highest. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Well, I first look at this whole idea of the minimum wage as a freedom principle and freedom of association. And if you start with that and end with that, things work out very well in protecting liberty as well as protecting the economy. Forced control of wages by government never works. It seems to work on the short run. Even today, we're putting up with seeing what's happening to the minimum wage going from $7 up to $15, and there's already evidence of prices for consumer goods that the very people who are pushing for minimum wage are suffering the consequences because they pay more for their food. But the most important thing, it interferes with a voluntary contract. Let's say one individual comes and he knows he's a marginal worker and needs to learn the job, and he's willing to go to work for $8 an hour. He says, yeah, I'll go on and put me on and I'll learn this and I'll work my way up. And the government says no to the businessman, you can't do that, you have to pay him $15. Well, that's a prohibition against a voluntary employment situation. That is the basic flaw in it. But then when you get into the economics, no matter what they tell you about minimum wages never hurt employment, no, the evidence is out there that it really does. And I think these recent raising of the minimum wage are going to be very detrimental to our economy. Wages are going to go up and the purchasing power of the dollar will not follow, and that will be a problem. It's going to be an added burden on the economy and help drive this economy down once again. I have another tweet here from Art Vandelay, and a good question on foreign policy. Why are civilian targets in Yemen being bombed by Saudi Arabia with the backing of the UK and America? Darn good question, and I think it's wrong. They shouldn't be doing it, but the question is why? Why are we doing it? Why do we support it? Why does Saudi Arabia? Well, Saudi Arabia might want to do it because they fear a rebellion in Saudi Arabia because they have been overly friendly with us, and we protect their oil, and we're a close ally, and we violate some of their beliefs by putting troops on their land. So Yemen has not benefited quite as much, and there's a rebellion there which actually threatens Saudi Arabia. But the big question that we as Americans should be answering, why are we supporting that? We can see this as being, you know, a border war going on, and yet here we are supporting it. So Saudi Arabia couldn't bomb anybody if we weren't providing the weaponry for them to fight. And to me, it's absolutely wrong for this, but it's many times it's commercial. It has to do with finances, and then, you know, the bigger question is why are we such close allies of Saudi Arabia? They're the strongest proponents of Sharia law. They do a lot more beheadings than ISIS does, and yet we're bosom buddies with Saudi Arabia, and we're backing this bombing. Most Americans don't know about it, and they don't care about it, and it's going to really be part of the serious problems that we have in the coming years, in the next decade or even longer, until this is ironed out. I think the violence in that area is going to escalate. We just, as I've said so many times, we don't have any business being over there, let alone picking sides, and then picking sides with people, you know, that we should be very cautious about trusting. And there's a close relationship with Saudi Arabia and 9/11. And now, interestingly enough, I have another tweet coming in here dealing a little bit with this very subject. It says, Ron Paul, will you sign and share the White House petition to declassify the 28 pages of the pages and petition the White House? Certainly I would. I think we should do anything possible. These are the pages that were classified and we're not allowed to read in the Senate investigation that most people now have figured out the close association, you know, with 9/11 and the Saudis. I can remember very clearly being in Washington, and with this happen, if I had to guess right, it was on a Tuesday, and it was trouble getting out, and I had to go to Baltimore to get out, and it was just horrible to get out of Washington, D.C. Yet we didn't know even that early, on that very day that it was happening, that Saudis had their private planes, and they were all practically ushered out and given free rein to leave the country, not even questioned once by the FBI. And the pages that they won't declassify tells a lot about that, according to those individuals who have looked at it. So yes, we should, and we should do whatever we can to find this. This is, once again, is trying to you know, make government transparent. But our problem today is that governments are secret, and we have no privacy left. And we need to reverse that. We should know about the secrecy of government. And when we finally try to protect the whistleblowers, like the various ones, Edward Snowden and others, who tell us the truth, they become the criminals, and they're considered you know, traitors. So this is the problem that we have, is getting the truth out. But very simply, if we would honor our Fourth Amendment to make sure the American people have their privacy, and of course, decent politicians should limit the secrecy of government. But right now, it looks like we're moving in the wrong direction because there were serious problems seen after 9/11, and guess what? The attack and since 9/11 has been on the American people. It's almost like the American people were guilty, and there is no doubt. And just talk to Edward Snowden. He says there is no doubt that the information was buried in there to know everything about what was to happen on 9/11, and he blamed it on the in-depth bureaucracy of having just way too much information, and it's never put together, and at least that's their explanation. They couldn't act on it. But his point is, just getting more information from more Americans and innocent people won't do any good. It will complicate the matter, and that, of course, gives our governments too much free rein. And this is why we should always question what they're doing, whether it's the lies they told leading up to the Iraq war, the lies about needing to take over Saudi Arabia, to take over Afghanistan. And right now, the lies we hear about Ukraine, and also the many lies that are being told about Syria. So this is the real answer to that, and to really try to understand that Saudi Arabia and Yemen is to get more transparency from our government. If we don't get it, we need to change our government. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and participating in this episode of Ask Ron Paul questions, and do it through live Twitter. But it's a lot of fun doing it, and let's hope we can do it again and come back to the Liberty Report soon.